Welcome to OAA Now, your home for Oakland Activities Association news and information. Here's your host, Sammy Taramina.
Welcome to OAA Now. I'm Sammy Taramina, blogger of the Dragon's Den, and also one of the hosts Between Taraminas on OAA Now. I'd like to welcome back Keith Dunlap of MI Prep Zone and the Oakland Press, and a huge Detroit Tigers baseball fan.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Hopefully, this is the stretch run. All this football fever's great, but baseball, nothing like pennant races in baseball.
Two back at Kansas City right now. You know, they play the Royals today.
Yeah, they've got to win. They've underachieved all year, but maybe they can get going the last 3 weeks here.
True. I mean, they've got three interesting topics we're going to talk about today. Of course, we're going to go first with boys basketball. Of course, our good friend Scott Bernstein had a couple of interesting news articles. Of course, one of the big shocks is in Farmington with Falcon coach Terrence Porter resigned from Farmington, and now he took a job at Detroit Northwestern. And now, of course, it's a little bit shocking, especially going to the PSL. What's your thoughts about Terrence Porter?
I mean, this stuff isn't unusual. It happens a lot, and I actually I don't know much about the Northwestern program, but you are going to the best league in the state, historically each year and year out, the PSL. Say what you want for the Detroit schools and how much they've declined and enrollment and schools closing and whatnot. The PSL is still a monster basketball league. The best still, in my opinion.
You got Pershing in there. You got Detroit Cass Tech in there. You got
King.
You got, and then, of course,
Southeastern.
Southeastern, sorry, yep.
Yeah, so, I mean, you go and I think that's a logical jump up. You go to a PSL school if you're basketball.
But what does this do to Farmington's program now that your head honcho is gone and Terrence Porter? What does that do for the program?
Well, again, they're not the a lot of teams deal with this every year. I mean, this isn't pro or college. A lot of there's various reasons why high school coaches leave, family reasons usually, but they'll be all right. They'll just find a replacement. He'll have to get, just like Terrence did, he'll have to get a hold of youth programs and build that way and set the foundation there. And so that'll be the hard part, but they'll find there's a lot of competent and good coaches out there looking for a varsity boys job, and they'll find a pretty good candidate.
Farmington, of course, they're also replacing their girls coach. Of course, Dave Brown now taking the job over at Milford. So this is going to be an interesting scenario for Farmington now that Terrence Porter now is gone, and also Dave Brown is gone now. What's the direction that Farmington goes, you think?
Well, no idea. Like I said, there's plenty of competent coaches in the area, again, looking for an opportunity, varsity opportunity. So they'll find someone good. It's just developing the kids like anything. Coaches don't matter if you don't have players. So, Dan Fife, A1 example there at Clarkson. He's got his program. He starts in 3rd, 4th grade. And so that's how you build it up. And,
of course, another situation here coming. Let's go up from Farmington to West Bloomfield, Aston Luglaj, he transfers over to Wall Lake Central, and it's perhaps a shocking, interesting thing because he was supposed to be the 3 this year for the Lakers, and there's been a loaded crew this year in the blue.
Yeah, I don't know what happened. I know the West Bloomfield nearly got those 2 Nigerian transfers from UD Jesuit. Maybe Luglaj, is that how you pronounce it?
Luglaj, yeah.
Maybe he would have stayed, but, again, things like this sadly happen all the time, even within public schools, these transfers. There's reasons, and there's connections with AAU coaches, and so it happens more often than not.
Well, it's very interesting here with this situation because, you're going to virtually, and let's not forget, Wall Lake Central, I think, is in the West Bloomfield district for basketball this year, and now you got Luaj. He could tell them how to stop the Lakers. You know what I mean? In the district that they do meet.
No, yes and no. I don't know. That's sort of overrated. Coaches can still change things up, and I don't think that really would be a big factor.
Well, now with the loss of Luglaj, this puts a lot of pressure now on Tristan Jackson and Michael King, among others, to get the job done over there at West Bloomfield. I know that what helps them is being in a lower division, the blue. Even though the blue, there's no gimmies with Oxford and Stony Creek in there. What's your thoughts about the impact that Jeremy Dana's had? I know he's had a rough offseason.
Good guy, good coach, did nice things at Berkeley, and again, as we've talked about, it's hard when you don't have players. So that's.
But he does have players at West Bloomfield.
Well, how many of them gone Division I college the last few years, or even college players?
True, but when you look at that situation over there, I just think that that's a huge loss for West Bloomfield.
But granted, when they got to the Final Four 11 years ago, they didn't really have
Right.
That was a special team they had.
Right,
so,
but that was a huge loss for him. That's a huge loss for West Bloomfield, losing him.
Yeah, it is. But you just forge on. They got a lot of good athletes in that,
and then, of course,
that district.
And then, of course, the last team, boys basketball team we're going to talk about before we get into the gridiron, before we go to break, is Oak Park. Of course, this is a very interesting situation for Brian Tipton. Of course, you look at Rodney Scales. Of course, he's a big guy, transfers out of state. But Oak Park gets 3 guys in return. You got Howard McInnes transferred from Southfield. You got Bobby Thompson Jr. coming over from River Rouge. And you got Jonathan Raines. I'm not sure where he transferred from. I think he transferred from Cody, coming over to Night Valley. I mean, what's your thoughts about what Oak Park's doing?
Well, they've done it in football and basketball the last few years. Hasn't really netted them any state championships yet. I mean, you get talent, but it's how it meshes, and it's just a whole different world when they get out there on the court and have to play within a team concept and get used to a coach's system. So just because they get talented players doesn't really mean everything. And I don't know who these players, if they've gotten any sort of scholarship offers from colleges, and how big of impact players they really are.
Well, I haven't seen these 3 players play, being honest with you, since being in the white, with Lake Orion. You know what I mean? It's very interesting, especially what Brian Tipton has done over there at Night Valley in his first 2 years there. He's virtually turned Oak Park around into virtually a very good basketball power.
Well, I wouldn't dub them a power yet. They haven't done anything in the playoffs. They got crushed in regionals, I remember. I don't know if it was Bloomfield Hills or Clarkston.
Yeah, it was
Bloomfield Hills, yeah. So, they've been okay. They've been decent. I think they may have even shared the league title last year, from what I remember. But yeah,
Lake Orion fans remember that very well.
Yeah, actually, I think they did with Troy, Oak Park and
Troy and Athens.
Yeah, it's a 3-way tie. Yep. So they've been okay, but better than they were before Tipton arrived. But
when you look at Oak Park, but also let's talk about another interesting rule, of course, Keith. Of course, that's the transfer rule. The transfer rule kicked in this year. Players have got to stay out now. They cannot play for a whole season. What's your thoughts about that?
Well, yeah, I like it. I like it a lot. A lot of people like it. I mean, this is, people who complain about Catholic or private schools and how they can recruit and, they get transfers and whatnot. I mean, it goes on in public schools just as much.
I mean, when you look at this...
So I think this helps curtail it a little bit.
When you look at this situation here, especially at a school like Oak Park, the transfer situation, they get a lot of transfers coming in there that they have to sit out a year, Do you think that the new transfer rule was I mean, even though we're not going to target personally, but you think this hurts a team like Oak Park in the near future?
No, they'll just probably transfer out sooner from their old places, especially if they have AAU connections. So.
Well, of course, the AAU situation now, now you're requiring people to transfer to you got to give them information from both old school and new school, and also from the AAU coaches if the MHA suspects that you're transferring to the AAU coach. You know what I mean? A team a team that could hurt also in the long haul, maybe it could hurt, is Southfield later, because Michelle Jackson Marshall, you know what I mean, she gets a lot of those players, you know what I mean, coming from other schools. I know one player in particular that she got a couple of years ago from Ferndale.
Yeah, but again, the big thing with coaches or core is just developing their own players, getting in the youth programs, and these transfers haven't really netted a lot of these programs. Really haven't netted them a whole lot of championships in the last few years. So, I mean,
when you look at that situation, Keith, do you think that it's an interesting situation to see that these players coming out and coming back to play? I mean, they're going to try to play right away, but do you think this rule is one of the things that that they can practice with the team, but they can't play in games?
Right. Yeah. Exactly. But yeah, still, if they know they're not going to play, they're probably not going to transfer. So this maybe means that it'll be harder for seniors to transfer, or juniors or seniors, but maybe players will be doing it a lot sooner. Or, as we've seen, this exodus of players who go out of state. We've seen that as well.
Right. I mean,
that's been more of a disturbing trend, really.
Especially when you look at the West Bloomfield situation this year, of course, with the 2 Nigerians, and then of course you got Billy Thompson Jr. going to Virginia playing this year.
Yeah.
So that's ought to be an interesting. It's been a tremendous off season for West Bloomfield, as we know. You know what I mean? It's tough.
A lot of teams really.
Yep. All right. When we come back, we're going to talk about football here on OA Now with Keith Dunlap.
As the summer begins to wind down, enjoy the transition into fall by loading up the family and taking a trip to Friendship Park for Barn Days on Saturday, September 13th from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. There will be plenty of activities for the whole family, including a petting farm, carnival games, inflatables, farm fresh produce, and a wagon ride. But be forewarned, you may encounter some Yankees and rebels who don't know the Civil War is over. The cost is $5 per vehicle, and proceeds help fund Orion Township's concerts and other events throughout the year. For more information, you can call 248-391-0304, extension 305, or visit oriontownship.org.
Welcome back to OA Now. I'm Sammy Termina, blogger of the Dragon's Den, and also one of the hosts of Between Terminas and 01 TV. We got Keith Dunlap back here from the Oakland Press and MI Prep Zone. And, of course, now we're going to go into the gridiron, okay, which is very unique because seeing some Week 2 recaps, when I look at some of these Week 2 recaps, I was just mind-boggled by a couple of games. You know, what game, OA game, shocked you last week?
Not many. I guess the one that surprised me or caught my eye was the Southfield-Adams game. Not because Southfield won. I think Southfield's a better team. Even though they never really win at Adams, they still have a lot of talent, and they're a better team. And the fact that Southfield had 4 Division I wideouts, cornerbacks going up against a very suspect Adams secondary, I think it was just a bad matchup for Adams. But to see Adams not score any points at home, to get shut out, I thought that, Southfield's very vulnerable traditionally to ground and pound type of teams.
Especially when you look at Adams, this is a team that runs a very option attack, and of course, not to see him score a point in that game, it's just mind-boggling to see.
Very surprised.
It's odd to see a Tony Petrino team just not score and get shut out. It's rare to see Adams lose at home, but it's also rare to see Adams get shut out.
Yeah, and those first game against Stony Creek, they scored 14 points in the second quarter, and in the last 6, it was in 6 points total. So the offense, maybe defenses have figured them out a little bit.
Do you think it's the do you think, I got some stats here on Adams, their 0-2 start. They're only scoring 20 points, which is 10 points a game, but their defense, 63 points, 31.5 points a game. That's something you don't see out of an Adams team.
Yeah, well, when the offense isn't controlling the ball, the defense is on the field longer. And again, we talked about even I think last week, just the pass defense for Adams is very suspect. That's their weak link. It was a concern to the coaches in the preseason from when I was talking to a couple people from Adams last week, and it's just reared its head the first 2 weeks. Just struggles in the secondary.
Another game that really shocked me from last week was Stony Creek and Oxford. Stony Creek, of course, scored 28 points against Adams, and yet they gave up a touchdown to Oxford late. I know Stony Creek had their chances in that game, but what's your thoughts on that one last week against Oxford?
Wasn't there, but sounded like a classic OA Red battle. 2 tough-nosed football teams battling out, and neither really gave an inch until the last minute of the game when Oxford finally broke through. It sounded like a very exciting game.
When you look at bud ball, that's what I call power football. I call it bud ball. Oxford, basically, it's sort of like a boring style type football, like pound the rock scheme that they do. Do you think that time possession is very important in this type of game, in that game against Stony Creek? Because when I talked to Brad Zuby on Facebook the other day, he said to me that offense did not do well in that game. They didn't.
Well, yeah. Some people think it's a meaningless stat, time of possession, but I'd say if you have the ball more, you're probably gonna win and score more, especially if your opposition is a high-powered, quick-strike offense. If they're on the field less, then it's best for the team that has the ball most.
And then of course another game that really shocked me was I was surprised. I was impressed with I was really, besides the games that weren't impressive last week, but I was surprised about Groves and Ferndale. You know what I mean? That game, that was a very interesting game. Groves winning.
2-0. So
Groves 2-0. You know, they won 27-16. Of course, beat Ferndale at Ferndale. Groves, of course, ranked number 9 in the Dragons' Den top 10. What's your thoughts about Groves this year? You know, they could do some damage in the blue.
They can. So 2 very good wins to start the year, beating their rival. I like the fact they had Zach Van Fossen returning. You know, teams that return their quarterback from the previous year always have a big advantage and a big leg up. But to see the running game, guys like Ernest Allen stepping up right away, that's a very good sign for Groves.
He's been a shock, Ernest Allen. He's been doing very, very well. You know, he's done but I'm curious to see if when they get into playoff time, you know what I mean, they're going to be playing a very tough opponent. They could be playing Birmingham Brother Rice in the first round of the playoffs.
Oh, yeah, they'll be playing an opponent that plays a lot harder schedule than it does, but they're not focused on that. They want to try and win a league title, and on a good start to do that.
Speaking of blue titles, Farmington getting back on track, winning Southfield late to 35-14. You know, do you think Farmington is back, or do you think that they have some work to do?
No, I think they're back. I think again, it was a disappointing result in the season opener against Harrison. Maybe not the fact that Harrison beat them, but just getting creamed like they did. But to come back, beat a decent Lathrop team is a good way to get back on track for the big game this week in Avondale.
Oh yeah, we're gonna go over that game.
This could be the OAA blue title at stake this week. You know, maybe Groves Berkeley have other things to say about that, but for
speaking of
Avondale and Berkeley, or Avondale and Farmington is going to be a great game.
Speaking of the Bears, you know what I mean? Like, they're another team I want to talk about was the Berkeley Bears. 88 points they scored in the last 2 games, 44 points a game. They've allowed 16 points total, 8 points a game. I mean, like, yeah, it's Pontiac last week. Pontiac's not a very good team, but what they did to Holly was just mind-boggling. Yeah, Holly's now 0-2.
Yeah, to go up to Holly, not an easy bus ride. And Holly's a much improved program in the last few years. That was an impressive first week win for Berkeley.
And then you got to look at the Bears. You think that Chris Sequoia's got that? They were 3-6 last year, and do you think Chris Sequoia has turned around that program a little bit?
Well, we'll see as the year progresses. You don't want to base it off 2 games, but their defense, 8-9 starters back from that defense last year, so that's always a great place to start. So yeah, we'll see that they could keep playing like this. They're going to be in the mix all year long.
Another game here that we're going to talk about from last week. Of course, it was the Lake Orion Troy Athens game last week. Of course, Troy Athens was up 7-0. Of course, they run that Missouri-style type offense led by Alice Massat. But then Matt Krause explodes again for 335 yards and 4 touchdowns. In the last 2 games, Krause has had over 700 yards and 8 touchdowns.
Yeah, that's pretty. That's video game stuff right there. That's coming out of nowhere, and you know, give credit to the offensive line too. They've much improved. Obviously, Chris Bell said they were bigger up front, and they're showing it. But yeah, Matt Krause, boy, that's unreal to be within striking distance of 1,000 yards with in 3rd week into the season.
It's kind of odd because, like, if you look at it here, a lot of the questions lingered around this defense. Lake Orion's defense, of course. They struggled last week. 2 weeks ago against Chippewa Valley, gave 38 points. This week they gave 22 points. They only gave up 8 points in the second half. But what's your thoughts about the Lake Orion defense right now?
Well, and it has nowhere to go but up after last year. It really struggled last year. So really it can't get much worse, and it probably won't with how good of a coach Dave Tooley is. I think it's just getting some kids some experience. I think they have some starters back or some semi-starters back, but just overall getting some players in key roles, some experience in that front 7. Developing some of those bigger players they got.
Of course, the Dragons are missing 2 key players out. As Drew Casey's out for the year with the torn ACL, and also Michael Jarvis is out for a couple weeks as well. But let's go to Troy Athens here on their point here. They won 34-31 2 weeks ago against Macomb Launch Cruz North, and then last week they and then of course lost Lake Orion last week. Their last 2 games they've scored 56 points, 28 points a game, but their defense has been a problem. What do you think? Why is Troy Athens' problem been on defense and this has been a defensive problem since 2011. Of course, when they lost to Romeo in the playoffs, their defense has been a mess.
Yeah, I don't know why. I'm not around the huddle or the team. Maybe just players or size. Maybe there's injuries. It's kind of surprising, but I don't know.
I mean, but do you think that with Troy Athens, it's basically like their defense is such, I mean, like, their offense is very good this year. Of course, this is a very, very good offense, very productive offense. And then you look at the defense, you know what I mean? You're giving up points more than you're giving, and you're scoring points. That's a huge problem. Do you think that, and of course, they play Oxford this week, which is going to be a very interesting game. What's your thoughts about, you know what I mean, about the Troy Athens offense?
Well, as you said, they're a threat, especially if they stay on the field and don't make mistakes. They can score points, but you can only outscore opponents so much.
That's true. I mean, like, when you look at it here, another game, of course, that we mentioned here was a close game last week. Birmingham Seaholm beating North Farmington 17-16. That was a shocking game. What's your thoughts, Keith, about on that one? Even though you said to me about Seaholm a little bit down this year. Of course, North Farmington, it kind of surprised me, even though the game was played at Bloomfield Hills, because Birmingham Seaholm did not have any power.
Yeah, North Farmington, that's a toss-up game. Two teams are in the blue last year, and moving up to the white. So I think Seaholm beat them pretty good last year. So, but Seaholm lost a lot. So I wasn't at the game, didn't see it. That score did surprise me a little. I thought North Farmington was going to win that game, but give credit to Seaholm for pulling through and rising up.
North Farmington did score a touchdown late, but I'm going to question here a gamble here by Kyle Schultz, that's their coach. He ended up wanting to go for 2 in the win instead of going for the tie and forcing overtime. Would you had questioned that decision, you know what I mean, instead of going for the tie?
Well, if it would have worked, everyone would have said he's a genius. So the fact it didn't work, they question him. So, I usually play the percentages and kick the extra point, but, sometimes coaches feel they got to play and it's going to work, and might as well just go for it there and then.
It kind of makes you reminds me that remember last year Michigan Ohio State when Brady Hoke decided to go for 2 against Ohio State when they had a chance to force overtime. I just think that pride and ego might have got the best of them, but do you think that Kyle Schultz wanted to prove a point in beating Seaholm?
No, he just wanted to get a win for his team, and maybe he felt that they maybe, I don't know what their injury situation was like. Maybe he felt this team was really tired and just said, "Hey, we don't like our odds in overtime. Let's try and win it here."
Interesting. I mean, like when you look at it, and of course, let's look at some other games here from last week. Oak Park being Royal Oak, pretty bad.
No surprise.
And then of course, Berkeley. Of course, we talked about them already. Farmington, we talked about them already. Orion talked about them already. But let's talk about another team that's had some issues. Rochester. 42 points allowed against Lapeer, 36 against Harrison. Good, and now they play North Farmington this week. What's your thoughts about Rochester issues offensively?
Well, my alma mater, by the way, so don't talk too. No,
I'm
I see
sorry
what
to
you're
hear
saying.
about
No, it's
that.
all right. But it's been like that for a while. They had one good year and made the playoffs about 3 years ago. Lost to Eisenhower in the first round.
Right.
That was only their first playoff appearance in some 15 years. So it's just been a program for 20 years that hasn't had much success. So I like what Eric Vernon does. I actually like him and how he runs things. He's a disciple of Ralph Munger at Rockford,
Right.
And very organized. He knows what he's doing, but just again, sometimes you just don't have the players. And I think the problem with Rochester this year is size. They have some experience at the skill positions, but they're not very big, and some of the kids that are big are very young and raw.
Right.
And it showed up in the first 2 games.
Especially because they were road games, you know what I mean? Now Rochester returns home. Do you think that young teams perform well at home, or do you think it's?
Oh, of course they do. Of course they do. They definitely, they don't have to make a bus ride. That disrupts their routine a little bit. But, the Harrison game was going to be a tough one.
Yeah.
But I'm sure they at least, maybe the first game of Lapeer they wanted to.
Well, it's kind of a bad matchup for when they played Lapeer, Rochester, because they had to go up M24. They had to go up, and then the traffic and the situation
but
up there.
not to score any points. The first, that's 2 shutouts in a row, I think.
I actually talked to my cousin who was actually in the band at Lapeer, and she told me that Rochester was not very good. And I said to her when I was up in Caseville a couple weeks ago, I said, Well, I told you, Rochester's not going to be a good team. You should win that game handily. And Lapeer right now is sitting 2-0 right now in the Saginaw Valley comp in the Red Division.
Yeah.
And then of course, a team that of course Avondale of course had no problem with Hazel Park 43-6. Josh Howman of course going nuts as always.
Yeah, no surprise. Hazel Park's still really struggling.
When you look at Hazel Park, of course, this is a team that's lost now 16 straight games ever since 2012. I mean, I know it's hard for Kyle Rowley to take to break. I mean, to put his system in place. But do you think right now he has the players right now for that program right now?
Well, no, his big concern is depth.
Right.
He even said himself he's got to go to the halls of the school to recruit some kids to play football. The enrollment did go up a little bit there at Hazel Park, which is good, but he still has some low numbers in the program. Depth's a major issue, and everyone's got to go two ways, and it just.
When you look at Hazel Park now, I mean, they ended up with that class enrollment. You know what I mean? They end up going from Class B up to Class A. I mean, when I look at the district, they're with Warren. They're in Warren. You know what I mean with their district. It's a tough situation there. I know it's going to hurt them, especially in volleyball, because they lost a lot of talent last year there. But
they're usually good in wrestling, so maybe that'll be their spirit.
They're usually good in wrestling, and then of course another team I've been very kind of surprised is Olympia Hills. I mean, this is a team that had of course, he had Nate Emery come back. I know they played two tough games, Wall Lake Northern and Clarkston. Do you think Olympia Hills can turn this thing around?
It's going to be tough.
It's going to be
tough.
Why?
I just don't think they quite have the depth or talent as other teams in the OAA Red.
Mm-hmm. And then, of course, and then we'll see what happens coming up. Of course, in Pontiac, we all know is a struggling team. You know what I mean? And it's been tough for Eric Lloyd. for John. Oh God, I can't.
John Lloyd.
John Lloyd. Sorry about that. Apologies to everybody here. Okay, when we come back, we're gonna preview the games this week for Week 3 here on OA Now.
Enjoy farm fresh produce, baked goods, art, and more at the 2014 Lake Orion Farmers Market sponsored by Crittenden Hospital. Walk, bike, or drive to the Orion Arts Center located at 115 South Anderson Street. Parents can purchase products grown and made locally while kids take part in fun activities like horseshoes and arts and crafts. Come early and come often as vendors change from week to week as new crops come into season. The Lake Orion Farmers Market is held every Wednesday from 2 to 7 p.m. through October 22nd. For more information or to sign up as a vendor, visit downtownlakeorion.org.
Welcome back to OA Now. I'm Sammy Termina, blogger of the Dragon's Den, and also on Between Terminus here with Keith Dunlap of MI Prep Zone and a huge Detroit Tigers fan. Of course, seeing that it looks like the Detroit Tigers may have scored some runs, according.
Yeah, knock on, but we'll see that last with this bullpen. So.
Yeah, of course, I'm worried about this bullpen, especially when it comes to the playoffs. You know what? Well, we got to get to the playoffs first.
Yeah, it's going to be a chore itself.
It'll be a chore itself. Ready to go over some Week 3 games? Of course, we're going to be, first we're going to talk about, but we're going to go from bottom to top, just get all the hype up the hoopla out of the way. First game we're going to talk about, of course, is to get this game out of the way. I call this the pillow fight of the week. Hazel Park and Pontiac. This is a very interesting matchup. Hazel Park's got it. This game has me a little bit going a little edgy. Hazel Park trying to snap that 16-game winning streak, going to Wisner Stadium to take on the Phoenix. Keith, but then again, of course, what's your thoughts about this game?
Well, I think both teams look at this as wow, this is our chance to win a game. You know, I mean, you hate to say that, but that's kind of probably how both teams are looking at it. Yeah, just two programs struggling with numbers right now and depth, and they view it wow, this is our chance to win a game. You know,
this is a huge opportunity.
Yeah, somebody has a chance to actually get on the win column. So, I think this will be in a way kind of like a Game 7 of the NBA or NHL Finals for these teams.
When you look,
I like Pontiac at home, though. I think they're a little bigger in Hazel Park, a little quicker, and I think being at home, I think Pontiac will win.
When you look at this game with Hazel Park and Pontiac, I just think that a lot of people, Pontiac's had some issues, you know what I mean, ever since Brad Zuby left, you know, and of course you had Damian Redmond who came in, tried to turn that program around, he struggled, and then you got John Lloyd who's now there. I mean, like, Pontiac, you know what I mean, I think they're more athletic than Hazel Park is. I just think that, but I think that, I think for good sakes, I think I'm going to give this win to Pontiac because Pontiac has suffered a lot. And then you look at especially having to deal with the Red last year with Lake Orion, Clarkston, Stony Creek, West Boone. They've had to play those type of teams. I mean, like, this is a matchup that I think when you look at it here with Hazel Park and Pontiac, I mean, like, you got to just have a heart. You know, you got to have a heart. I'm going Pontiac. You know what I mean? I'm going Pontiac by 3 scores. Of course, another game here we're going to talk about is a unique matchup. North Farmington playing Rochester. Your alma mater. Do you think your alma mater gets a win this week against North?
Well, we'll see if they can actually score some points. That'd be the first step, and forget winning. The first step would be to score points. Shut out in the first 2 games. At least I thought they got shut out against Lapeer.
Yeah, they did get shut out against Lapeer.
Yeah, shut out against Harrison, shut out Lapeer. Yeah, I think you'd have to like Rochester's chances at home here. North Farmington, a pretty solid team, but couldn't beat Seaholm last week. Seaholm had lost a lot, and got drubbed by Grove. So I'll take Rochester at home.
I'm gonna go the other. I'm gonna take North Farmington. Here's why. They have a defense. They're experienced. They got an experienced defense. You know, I mean, like, they allowed 17 points last week against Seaholm, but I think they got a very good quarterback. They got a very good they got a good receiving core. I just think that I think North Farmington's going to give Rochester a lot of fits. I know it's Rochester's first home game. They're going to be excited to play in front of the home folks. I just think North Farmington's going to just basically it'll be a close game. It'll be a good game. I think that North Farmington's going to beat Rochester maybe by a field goal, you know. And then of course, you know, next game we're going to talk about here, of course, is we got one of the hottest teams in the blue. It's Berkeley going up against Ferndale.
Yeah, this will be a big test for Berkeley. Probably the toughest game of the year so far.
Mm-hmm.
Ferndale, not a bad showing against Groves last week at home. It's a rivalry game too, and but I think Berkeley plays like it does the first 2 games. It's going to win. The defense will be the difference, and Berkeley will eke out a 10-point win.
When you look at Berkeley,
not eke out, but
when you look at Berkeley, when you look at the Bears, you know this team's known for their defense. They've had some offensive issues. What's your thought when you look at the Bears? You know what I mean. They've been hot offensively. With Ferndale, you know, this is a team beat Livonia Clarenceville, you know what I mean? This team is not a bad team. Eric Royal, I think, is going to have his troops ready, but what do you grade Eric Royal's performance right now at Ferndale?
So far, so good. Again, you beat a Clarenceville team that you couldn't beat last week, and you give Groves a decent game. So far, his players seem to be buying into what he's trying to do.
You know, I mean, like, he always takes it as a process. You know, I think of Ferndale. I just think that, but in this game here at Berkeley, it's a big, big game. You know, Ferndale, for the last few years, this has been a game where I think Ferndale usually loses. But I should lean Ferndale, but I think I learned my lesson last week by, I'm going to take Berkeley in this game because I think the Bears defensively, they're very, very talented. I just think that they're going to give, I think they're going to be just fine. You know what I mean? I think Berkeley over Ferndale, maybe 21-17. Next game we're going to talk about here, of course, very interesting game on the Hearts, and that is the, we're going to talk about this one anyway. This is the death match I call for poor Royal Oak, of course. This is a team we haven't talked about. You know, they got destroyed last week by Oak Park, 35-0, and now they got to play number 3 Southfield.
Yeah, not a ideal 2-week stretch here. I'm going to play Oak Park and Southfield, and Royal Oak. You'll feel for them. They'll battle hard. They just don't have the players that Southfield does.
Well, let's look at what Tim Chapman's done, though. I was very curious to see how he did. Of course, replacing Ryan Irish over there at Royal Oak. But this is insane. You have to play Oak Park, you have to play Southfield, and you have to play still have to play Adams, you have to play Harrison, And then you got to play the crossover. I mean, like, good God.
Yeah, Royal is a team that probably belongs more in the blue, but they had to move somebody up, so.
If there was a team that I should have thought that should have moved up in the blue, it would have been Farmington.
Yeah, or stayed in the white, yeah.
Or stay in the white, yeah, but...
Farmington should have, but maybe next year, a couple years, it'll happen that way.
Okay, what's the spread you got with Southfield being Royal Oak? What's the spread?
Yeah, I think by at least 3 touchdowns.
I think 6, but
Yeah.
that's just me.
And they'll probably call off the Dogs way before that gets to that point.
That'll probably be, that'll be really, really bad. I feel bad for Tim Chapman already. Another interesting game we're going to talk about here is Birmingham Seaholm and Rochester Adams. Adams, of course, we mentioned earlier, having some issues defensively. They still got to go to Oak Park. They got to go to Harrison. And they got to play in that crossover. They're probably going to probably get looking like the 4th best team right now in the Red. And the Red this year is a lot deeper this year than years past.
Well, yeah, Adams is still in the white.
Yes.
Yeah, disappointing effort the last couple weeks, but especially last week, getting shut out at home. I expect Adams to come out pretty on fire in this one. I think the offense will get clicking, and we'll take advantage of a Seaholm team that is coming off a good win last week, but just doesn't quite have enough. So I think Adams will finally get on track here at home.
Well, when I look at Adams, I mean, like, Tony Petrino's, I don't think he's ever started 0-3 at Adams. I don't think he's ever started a season 0-3. Of course.
He might have 2 years ago, but yeah.
Well, of course, if Adams doesn't make the playoffs this year, this is to be the second time in 3 seasons they haven't made the playoffs. In which that would be that would be very unholy over there, Adams. I mean, like,
Yeah.
when I look at this game with Seaholm, it would have been a good matchup last year. Because I think both teams run a veer offense. Because I know Adams definitely runs one. Jim DeWald, I know a couple years ago, ran a veer option.
And he run. Although DeWald likes to run it more out of the pistol.
Right, more of the pistol
More
formation.
Petrino
yeah.
is more of this
veer.
standard shotgun.
More standard
so.
shotgun veer option, type of. I'm gonna be a shock here. I'm gonna shock you here. I'm gonna take Seaholm in an upset because I'm not sold on Adams' defense at all, especially with what happened over there. I think Tommy Shepard's gonna, and remember Tommy Shepard, he was the quarterback last year. He's now back. I mean, like, I just think that Adams' pass defense very suspect. Seaholm's got some big receivers the outside. I just think that Seaholm's gonna just they're gonna survive Adams. I think they're gonna upset him this week in a squeaker.
Okay.
And a little squeaker. Next game we're going to talk about here, of course, we talked about one ranked game already here. We're going to go with Stony Creek and Bloomfield Hills. Stony Creek, of course, they need a hug after what happened last week with Oxford. Bloomfield Hills, they got murdered last week by Clarkson. This looks like a mismatch on paper, but who knows? It could be an interesting game.
It'll be a little closer than maybe people think, but I think Stony Creek has proven in the last 2 weeks that they can play with anybody, and if there's anything Stony Creek will have to adjust to this week, it's being the role of a favorite in a game they're supposed to win. But I think ultimately too much defense for Stony Creek. They'll bottle up Nate Emery and win.
When you look at Bloomfield Hills, I mean, they played a tough schedule. They played Bloomfield Hills. They played Clarkston, Stony Creek, of course, Adams and Oxford. I mean, looking at this game, of course, Bloomfield Hills being at home, you know what I mean? I think they're going to give Stony Creek problems in this one. But Stony Creek, the last week, of course, proven to me that their defense is for real. That pressure defense that they put in, of course, by Joe Platts. What do you think about Stony Creek's pressure defense that they put in? Of course, I saw it personally last year both of us saw it personally last year when what they did to Lake Orion last year.
Joe Platts is a player in the middle. He's a two-way force. He's maybe one of the better kept secrets in all of Oakland County. He can play. He played a great game against Adams. He was stuffing every hole. So I like him a lot. And just a team with a lot of grinders and underachievers and coached very well. And just a team you really it's hard to really hate.
When you
get a lot out of their team.
When you look at Stony Creek, you know what I mean? Do you think that they could try to make the playoffs for the second straight year? Do you think do you give them a good chance to make the playoffs, or do
Very
you think
good chance, because their schedule later in the year lightens up considerably. I mean, to beat Adams and then almost beat Oxford, Yeah, I think they're on a good track towards
Still,
that.
and you got Clarkson and Lake Orion at home. Of course, Lake Orion is really upset after what happened last year.
The key game for Stony Creek might be playing West Bloomfield later in the year.
Mm-hmm.
But
West Bloomfield, very improved team. You know what I mean? Got to give them props there. And this game here with Bloomfield Hills, I like Stony Creek to beat them. It'll be a close game. I think it'll be 4 points. And that spread there. Next game we're going to talk about here is number 9 Beverly Hills, Willie Groves, and Southfield Lathrop. That ought to be a very interesting matchup. Southfield Lathrop looked bad last week.
Yeah, 4:00 game too.
Mm-hmm.
So fatigue and conditioning is going to be huge in this game. And Lathrop, we thought maybe they were on the cusp of really breaking out. Setback last week, but Groves is playing too well right now and too much of a rhythm, so I'm going to take Groves.
I'm going to be honest with you, I was very disappointed last week with Lathrop because Farmington was a team I thought that was well for the picking. And then, they came up and just did not play well. But Farmington's a good team. But I just think right now, with the way that Groves is playing right now, I mean, they're red hot right now. They're playing well. They're they're on a roll right now. It'll be an interesting test when they play teams like Farmington and Avondale and Berkeley. I think those 3 games are going to really tell Groves' season. I'm going to take Groves in this game over Lathrop because I just think, even though Lathrop, I think, has got one of the best bands there, I just think their football team's it's getting better, but I just think Groves is going to be dancing in front of that band.
No, I agree.
Next game we're going to talk about, speaking of that, is the game. Avondale and Farmington. This is an interesting game. You said it for the Blue Championship. Could be a Blue Championship game. What's your thoughts about this match? Josh Hallman against Farmington's defense.
A lot of speed, a lot of athleticism is going to be displayed on this field. Yeah, I thought these two teams going into the year were going to be the kings of the OA Blue. Who knows if it'll play out like that, because especially the Groves, Berkeley have played. But this is if there's a game that you would point to at the beginning of the year, say that's it in the OA Blue, this is going to be the one.
When I talked to my first ever OA Now podcast, I said that Avondale Farmington would be the game, I think, to decide the Blue. And
I agree. And Farmington getting back on track last week, I think, is a little bit will be a nice boost for them. Playing at home again, 3rd straight week at home, so I like Farmington too. Bottle up Holloman and didn't take care of business.
Well, I look at the Farmington game with Avondale. I'm going to go the opposite way. I'm going to take Avondale because here's why. I mean, Farmington's going to try to dare, basically, they're going to dare Josh Hallman to beat him. But they got a very good quarterback, of course. He is a baseball player.
Jane,
yep. I think that he's gonna do some damage in the air. Of course, Farmington. Of course, I'm not sold on their pass defense. Even though last week they had a pick 6 for a touchdown, and then I just think Avondale behind Jane. Was it Craig?
I think it was Robert or
Robert James. I think that
Robert or Travis.
Travis.
I can't remember.
I think behind him, I think they're going to beat Farmington. I think it's going to be a close game that people think, and then we'll see what happens there. I like Avondale this game. Next game we're going to talk about here is Lake Orion and Troy. The question's going to be, do you think Matt Krause gets 1,000 yards by the end of this?
It's a possibility. Troy really struggled last week against West Bloomfield. Troy's problem really isn't defense; it's just scoring points right now. A lot of new starters on offense still haven't really come together and gelled. So I think Troy's a team that can play some solid defense, but eventually wear out. And I like Krause to have another big game in Lake Orion, and one of its 3 home games during the regular season will take advantage and win.
The other 2 is West Bloomfield and Clarkston.
Yeah.
For this team, I mean, when you look at this game here with Troy and Lake Orion, I just think that the Dragons, this is finally be at home. You know what I mean? To have, and wearing those green uniforms with the white sleeves. I wish they would have kept the green ones and the road ones in 2012. You remember that?
Yeah.
Wrote a blog article on that. But anyway, back to it here. Lake Orion's defense, of course, we talked about this earlier in the show about how they didn't look good against Chippewa Valley. Of course, told you about Drew Casey being out for the year with the ACL, and of course Mike Jarvis is also out for this team. I think when you look at this team here, I just think that Troy, it would not surprise me to score points, but it wouldn't surprise me if they get shut out. You know what I mean? I mean, like, of course, I just think Lake Orion right now, this is a game that they need, especially next week, especially the next 3 games against Oxford, Stony Creek, and West Bloomfield. West Bloomfield's this team's homecoming. I just think right now that this is a game Lake Orion needs. If they would have won that Chippewa Valley game, I would have felt much more comfortable. And then now they got to play Oxford next week. That's an interesting matchup because you got Krause going up against Scott Schudervack of Oxford. And you just think that with this team is that is if this defense shows up and plays well, then this team's going to do well.
Yeah, I agree. The running game, the offense has proven they're not going to miss a beat, and Krause has evolved into that just incredible force. But as long as I think just the key is the trenches. There's talk about a lot of young linemen that are good, but they just got to develop. Coaches really like the fact that they're bigger than they had been in years past.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just a matter of just developing those guys. If they develop and grow up fast, that's going to bode very well.
Mm-hmm. And of course, speaking of when you look at Troy, of course they're replacing quarterback. Of course, they got a very good running back, and Eric Peperankin, I think that's his name.
Well, they're obviously not doing enough, though. I mean, 3 points in the first 2 games.
Yeah, it's not a good omen right there. I'm gonna say Lake Orion. I think by 4 touchdowns. How many touchdowns are you giving up?
Yeah, 3 to 4 touchdowns. Yeah.
Okay. The next game we're gonna talk about here, I can't believe we're going by this flying here. We got Oxford, Troy, Athens. This is a trap game for Oxford because we got Lake Orion next week. What's your thoughts about this?
Yeah, it's not going to be an easy game, but I think Bud Raleigh, I don't think he'll let him lose their focus, and Oxford will grind out another win and do what it does.
I've been looking at this game. I've been analyzing this game a lot and I saw Troy Athens play. I know Jason Smith was also there. Troy Athens can definitely throw it around. They have athletes who can do some balance. You know what I mean? The question's going to be up front with their line. Oxford's very physical. Of course, Oxford's defense, of course, they did well last week against Stony Creek, and then, of course, they had some issues with Romeo, you know what I mean, especially of their offense, and hard to believe Romeo's 0-2 to start the year as well. You know what I mean? That's another team that's been a disappointment. But
who did they lose to last week?
Grosse Pointe South beat them 35-14.
Wow.
Yep.
That's surprising.
Yeah, it was a huge surprise, especially in the course with Romeo. They still got to play. Romeo still got to play Macomb, Dakota. Utica Eisenhower's on there.
Grosse Pointe South's a baseball school.
Yeah, they lost to them at Grosse Pointe, and they still got to play Port Huron. So I could see they might not make the playoffs this year, Romeo. No. And that's surprisingly because you've seen Romeo play,
especially with all they had back on offense.
Yeah, with all
last year.
Yeah, with all they had back on offense, then you have to see them lose Oxford and then just get absolutely whooped in Grosse Pointe by Grosse Pointe South. I mean, I'm going to go on a limb. I'm going to pick the upset here. I think Oxford's looking ahead to Lake Orion next week, especially at home. This is Oxford's first road game going to Athens. I mean, I just think Alice Massat, you know what I mean? He's got a very good cannon for an arm, you know what I mean? He, if he stays accurate, he stays, and his wide receivers also create space. I think they're going to give Oxford problems, especially with their depths, you know what I mean? Because, Glacier Wallington, he plays 2 ways, and I think that could be an issue in that game,
I don't, but we'll see what happens.
We'll see what happens there, of course. And then, of course, I know one of these 2 games you're going to be at for sure. Of course, we're going to go with the crazy fantasy game from last year. Remember 60-52 last year between Oak Park and between 6th-ranked Oak Park and 2th-ranked Harrison?
No, I wasn't there, and thank goodness. And yeah, this is the first really marquee matchup in the OAA White this year. Mm-hmm. Oak Park, 1-1, lost to Cass Tech week 1, and Harrison just like a track meet. So much speed, so much jumping ability on both sides. I mean, this is if you like that kind of football, just athletes all over the field. You're gonna love this game, and you flip a coin, but I think it'll come up on the side of Harrison at home. That'll be the edge.
When you look at this game, Keith, I mean, this game was crazy last year. I was in Coach Greg Curtis's athletic office. He's the AD at Oak Park. And that was probably one of the most dangest games I probably have ever seen. 60-52 last year. No defense around. I mean, I know Harrison hasn't been tested yet. I mean, Farmington was a joke last week, 2 weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
And no problem with Rochester. Oak Park's been tested. You know, of course, the Knights, of course, with Detroit Cast Tech, and then they had that little get ready game with Royal Oak. I like Oak Park in this one because I mean, like, Oak Park's gonna be motivated after what happened last year. I just think that they're gonna find a way to shut down Javon Shaw. I just think that Oak Park right now, battle tested more. I think they're gonna be just fine against Harrison. It's gonna be a close game. It wouldn't surprise me if that game is 60-52 or maybe even a higher score. You know what I mean? It wouldn't surprise me, but there will probably
win either. Yeah, it'll be a game of offense.
Oh yeah,
no doubt about it.
No defense. Defense will be optional in that game, and of course the last game we're going to talk about here on this is Clarkston, West Bloomfield, number 5, West Bloomfield, number 1, Clarkston. West Bloomfield's first test against Clarkston. I mean, like, this is a big test for West Bloomfield. West Bloomfield's got a murderous row schedule coming up. What's your thoughts?
Well, obviously West Bloomfield is looking at this game as a measuring stick type of game to figure out where they're at. I think they'll play well and they'll fight and they won't get embarrassed, but Clarkston just got too much, and being at home, I don't see Clarkston losing this game.
I think it's gonna be a closer game than people think. You know, West Bloomfield.
Oh yeah, I don't think it'll be a blowout, but
it won't be a blowout. I think Tristan Jackson's gonna make plays. I think Michael King's gonna make plays. Obi Jackson's gonna make plays. I think that West Bloomfield will surprise some people, but you're right. Clarkson's got way too much. You got DJ Zazula, Adamatic. I just think that that offense and that offense. But I think this is going to be a closer game than people think. Of course, I'm curious to see how Clarkson's defense does against a very athletic West Bloomfield team. Of course, this is probably the first time in a long while they're going to see a spread quarterback like Tristan Jackson.
Well, now Dakota, I think, ran a spread offense too. So, and then last week Bloomfield Hills sort of similar. So, and Clarkson's used to seeing that. So, Clarkson at home.
Yeah, we'll see what happens there. I'm going to take Clarkson too. I mean, like, the Wolves, very, very good team. I mean, like, but I'm curious to see how they do on the road, especially because, like, and of course, there's those 2 weeks that Clarkson, I think, gotta have, and that's week 5 against Oxford on their homecoming, and week 8 at Lake Orion. Those 2 games are gonna be just interesting.
They always are, yeah.
I mean, like, heck, even last year, of course, when Clarkson won the state title, I mean, Lake Orion and Clarkson were tied 28-28 up at 3 quarters.
Yeah.
That's what happened there. I mean, like, we'll just see what happens. What do you think about West Bloomfield's murderous row schedule, especially having to go to Clarkson, go to Lake Orion, go to Stony Creek? And
you gotta play them all at once anytime. Even whether it's spread out or all at once in the middle of the year. They all count the same. So, it's just more reason for the West Bloomfield to be thankful they won its first 2 games and just try and survive it and get to the end.
Well, you see West Bloomfield being a playoff team this year.
Yes, I do.
Be interesting, especially looking at I think they can be a playoff team, you know what I mean? But I think that game at Lake Orion for West Bloomfield is going to be a huge, huge measuring stick game.
Yeah, I think the big game for both West Bloomfield and Stony Creek will be against each other.
Mm-hmm.
I think whoever wins that game is going to be a clear path to playoffs, and the loser is going to have a little more work to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that'll be a very interesting coming up. I think that that's going to be a very good game here. I think that West Bloomfield's a team to keep an eye on, especially in the next 2 weeks. 2 weeks, you know what I mean, during the year. You know what I mean? Yep, Keith Dunlap, thank you for coming on here for the second week in a row. I mean, like, this has been a great environment, great atmosphere to see one of the best high school minds in the game coming here, and a sweet Detroit Tigers fan here.
Yes, go Tigers.
Yep.
World Series bound, I hope.
I hope so, too. You know what I mean? Of course, hockey season's about 30 days away. Can't wait for my Dallas Stars to play.
Union Stars.
Yeah.
Training camp, yeah.
Yes.
He'll be in attendance at training camp down there.
You'll betcha, yep. I can't believe the Cowboys lost, though. Disappointment, though. But the Lions played tonight against the Giants, you know what I mean? That's a special pick. Lions win at home, of course. Michigan State losing to Oregon last week. I don't think this team's going to panic.
Nah.
Do you think so?
Probably, that's a tough play. I mean, you probably lose that game 8 or 9 times out of 10. So
and then, of course,
you just move on.
What's your thoughts of Michigan getting destroyed?
I couldn't believe it was that bad.
That was that bad.
I couldn't believe it.
Good God.
I mean, not surprised they lost, but to not score, to get shut out for the first time in 30 years.
Good God, yeah.
Very surprising.
Okay, for Keith Dunlap, I'm Sammy Taramina. See you next week, everybody.
OAA Now is produced at Orion Neighborhood Television, Lake Orion's community media outlet. To learn more about ONTV, visit our website at www.orionontv.org or call us at 248-393-1060.